Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are taking a hard look at a massive operational shift that executives really need to wrap their heads around. We're talking about moving away from bloated static reporting factories and stepping into the real era of enterprise intelligence. And, well, we're going to start with a case study that is, honestly, it's pretty unbelievable.
So, our story starts with a U.S. healthcare company. They were in the middle of dropping nearly $500 million on a major transformation program. The goal? Completely reinvent their business, swap out their core administration platform, and modernize their entire data architecture from the ground up. But right in the middle of one of their final design reviews, the executive team stumbled onto a major reality check. Over the years, without really noticing, the organization had quietly accumulated more than 500,000 legacy reports, 500,000. And get this, they weren't even a Fortune 50 giant. Their annual revenue was under $2 billion. The situation was just staggering. One of the work streams actually estimated the cost to migrate those 500,000 legacy reports into the brand new system, and the price tag ran into the hundreds of millions of dollars. The absolute absurdity of spending hundreds of millions just to move old reports from point A to point B, it literally halted the conversation. The entire room just went dead quiet. And then, the dark humor kind of set in. One executive just smiled and said, "I receive reports every week that I don't even know how to unsubscribe from." Everyone else just nodded in agreement. They realized that half of these documents were just endlessly forwarded around the ether of the company. It hit them all at once. They hadn't built an intelligence capability at all. They had built a totally unmanageable reporting factory.
Which brings us to Section 1, the root cause, accumulated complexity. So how does this kind of massive bloat actually happen to otherwise really smart organizations?
Well, it happens step by step. Think about your own company for a second. Step 1, perfectly reasonable business requests. Finance needs month-end figures, sales wants pipeline visibility. It all makes perfect sense, right? Step 2, constant accumulation. Every new business question generates another report, but virtually nobody ever retires the old ones. And Step 3, vendors protect the status quo. The vendors managing these systems are paid based on their billable footprint. Shrinking the report count means shrinking their revenue, so they have zero incentive to challenge the complexity. They just keep building. Now, to their credit, the company did something genuinely disciplined. They audited that massive portfolio and managed to reduce those 500,000 reports down to fewer than 100 through strict governance and pushing the rest to self-service. But here's the catch. That only solved an inventory problem. It meant fewer reports, sure, but executives still couldn't dynamically interrogate trusted data to answer new, unexpected questions.
And that leads us to Section 2, the true bottleneck, which is attention scarcity.
The real choke point here was never actually the number of reports.
Here's what's really going on. Today's knowledge workers deal with roughly 275 interruptions every single day. That means you're getting distracted about every 2 minutes. Add in all the communication overhead, and you're left with maybe 40% of your workday for the actual synthesis and reasoning that good decisions require. Shrinking a pile of static reports doesn't magically give your brain more capacity to process the data.
But despite this severe lack of attention capacity, look at how companies are spending their money. Legacy business intelligence infrastructure can eat up to 80% of an IT budget. Technical debt consumes 40% of IT budgets across the industry. We're talking about average organizations dropping $30 million a year just to keep a single legacy system on life support. And when they finally try to upgrade under cost pressure, they usually do a lift and shift. They just blindly move junk from one expensive platform to another without ever stopping to ask what intelligence the business actually needs. Moving right along to Section 3, the shadow reporting reality, or how spreadsheets take over. Because the official systems are so bloated and slow, employees naturally take matters into their own hands. This is wild. 70% of teams have adopted shadow tools. I mean, how many times have you seen this? It happens even in companies that have spent an absolute fortune on official enterprise dashboards. You can shut down a legacy reporting environment today, and a shadow version of it will pop right back up in a few months. It's not a lack of discipline. It's a glaring symptom of a completely broken model. In fact, 3 out of 4 employees end up building their own informal spreadsheet workarounds just to fill the gaps left by the official BI systems. Just think about the typical enterprise workflow. You ask IT for a report, they put it in a queue, and maybe 8 weeks later, you get an answer that's kind of half as good as what you actually needed. The completely rational response to that kind of friction is to just build your own shadow spreadsheet.
To fix this, we enter Section 4, the shift to enterprise intelligence, and the decision capital framework. We absolutely have to shift our executive mindset. We need to stop focusing on producing static information and start enabling dynamic reasoning.
Consider the conceptual shift from a reporting factory to true enterprise intelligence. For 30 years, business intelligence basically meant trying to guess every single question an executive might ever ask and then building a static dashboard for it. But AI flips that entirely. We go from building reports to just asking questions directly. We move from staring at historical dashboards to having dynamic, real-time conversations with our data. It is a fundamental leap from simple data retrieval to genuine knowledge interrogation.
The difference here might seem subtle, but it's totally profound. One model is all about optimizing the production and delivery of information. The other? It optimizes the velocity of decisions. We've spent the last 3 decades absolutely obsessed with optimizing information, but the next decade? That belongs entirely to the organizations that optimize decisions.
And the data completely backs this up. Right now, 88% of organizations are using AI, but only 39% are seeing any real enterprise-level impact on their bottom line. The high performers, the ones actually capturing 5% or more in EBIT, are doing it through fundamental workflow redesign. They aren't just bolting AI onto their old reporting factories. And time is definitely running out here. Gartner predicts that by 2027, half of all business decisions will be AI-augmented. By 2030, explicitly modeled decisions are going to be 80% faster and vastly more trusted. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the executive mandate and the questions every leader must ask. We need some rapid, hard-hitting questions to force leadership to rethink their entire data architecture from the ground up.
Let's start right at the top, with the CEO. The absolute crucial question they have to answer is, if every single dashboard disappeared tomorrow, what decisions would I still need to make? For the CEO, the focus has to shift completely to the underlying strategic decisions, ignoring the visual crutch of the dashboards altogether.
For the CFO, the key question is, how much executive time are we spending just validating numbers, instead of actually allocating capital and managing risk? Just think about all those hours lost in meetings, arguing over whose spreadsheet is right or which system's report is accurate. That is literally lost capital and wasted opportunity.
And for the COO, you have to ask, which operational decisions are being delayed because we simply can't reconcile information quickly enough? The critical metric here is execution speed. You just cannot operate efficiently if the constant friction of legacy data reconciliation is dragging you down.
And you really need to grasp this next point. By the year 2030, CEOs actually expect AI to make 48% of operational decisions without any human intervention at all. That is a massive leap from just 25% today. The demand for autonomous, trusted decision-making is accelerating, and it's happening fast. Ultimately, the whole thing boils down to this. The competitive advantage will no longer be who has more data. It will be who makes better decisions, faster, with greater confidence. Access to data was never really the end goal. You can't have a meaningful conversation with a pile of static reports. The true purpose of data has always been to improve decision velocity.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to chew on. Are we just pouring money into more reporting infrastructure, or are we truly building an enterprise intelligence capability? Is your current strategy genuinely solving a decision problem, or are you just paying hundreds of millions of dollars to protect the status quo? Definitely something to think about as you evaluate your own organization's